Hey you, I'm Ali Amo, and this is the Lease on Life podcast. Going back to looking at the childhood chapter of my book, Detangling the Web of Life, the complete guide to understanding you and everyone else. We're going to be looking at the Kickstarter of the victimhood cycle that I was stuck in for a very long time, and many people in adulthood are still stuck in this cycle, but the driving force behind it is this cycle, and you will see it prevalent in so many areas of life, particularly social media, and that's the cycle of validation. The problem with the cycle of validation is that no one can avoid its infliction because it's embedded into childhood, even if yours was perfect. All we really want in life is for people to affirm our truths, accept our emotions, and recognize the worthiness of our opinions. This is why telling your story as an adult is the predominant form of expression for our childhood cycles. We desire to be heard, felt, understood, and connected with. So we share what we've gone through in an effort to seek validation for our pain and suffering. As children, the majority of us weren't able to be open and freely share our deepest struggles. We were hardly free to openly express our emotions, as we weren't able to be properly supported through them. So as we progressed from childhood into adolescence, we'd learn to bury far more than we showed. Without a voice for our pain or an outlet for its impacts, all the suppressed secrets and emotions of the past start to rise up. Rather than keep pushing them down and pretending you're okay, it's easier to rely on things outside of you to change how you feel inside altogether. Teenagers don't have to reach very far for substances, so for me, using them was a no-brainer. The problem was that two addictions formed, though I was only aware of one. Everything changed once I realized that my substance addiction was also an addiction to validating my victimhood. The victimhood cycle was mostly expressed through trauma responses, such as mistrust and sleep disturbances. But each time that cycle became physical, it simultaneously kick-started the cycle of validation. So the urge I'd get to do something to take the edge off my edginess was the end of one cycle and the start of another. Victimhood was the front wheels and validation was the back, revolving together and driving me, the vehicle, straight off a cliff. These two cycles can be entangled quite easily because we all grow up with the cycle of validation. It's such a normal part of daily life for a child that we never even notice it exists. The fact that it's present in every environment not only allows it to function under the radar, but ensures that we perpetuate it on our own, unaware of what we're actually doing. Do you realize how many essential aspects of your childhood had to be validated by an adult? Any outburst had an adult deciding if there was an issue and whether it was worthy of your emotional response. Disagreements were cross-checked to determine if your argument had any merit and choose the outcome. Your presentation, expression, attitude, effort, ideas, and communication were constantly scrutinized by the adults around you. Everything you felt, thought, said, and did required acceptance and approval. At home, it was a parent. At school, it was a teacher. On the field, it was a coach, and so on. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying adults shouldn't oversee things for children. But the problem is, too often, the validity of a child's thoughts and emotions are shut down by adults unwilling to deal with them, mostly because they don't know how. As this cycle is inflicted on each generation by the last, parental unavailability and incapacity becomes inherently expected, which is exactly why we must break this generational cycle. And you do actually see that these days, don't you? That whole gentle parenting is a response to the unavailability and the incompetency of the parents of the boomer generation who couldn't handle your emotions and tried to shut them down or ignored them altogether or threatened you if you were to express them. That whole stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about kind of thing. And the attempt to break that cycle is what's caused this movement of gentle parenting. As Dr. Bruce Lipton explains, our experiences between gestation and 6 years of age create the most powerful programs in our subconscious minds. This influence is often described as conditioning. So, how would the cycle of validation repeating across all of your environments impact you? It would program your subconscious mind to value the approval of others higher than your own and condition you to go against your intuition and instincts. How any of us can develop a strong sense of self afterwards is a miracle. How could we learn self-approval when we were always told if we were right or wrong, good or bad, telling the truth or lies by someone else? Rather than be free to discover your authentic self, this cycle pressured you to meet the expectations of others. You had to oblige to keep yourself liked and validated, though it's possible you had to keep those around you happy for your own safety and protection. As it was inflicted everywhere you went, this cycle frequently invalidated your true nature and set the stage for you to keep transforming into who everyone else wanted you to be. Clearly, this cycle created issues for the real you, because being accepted as someone you're not forces you to disconnect from yourself. So you had to suppress the part of you that was seen as unacceptable, which enabled people-pleasing to become your normal way of life. What could have possibly been more limiting or damaging to your self-expression as a child? Though it was first inflicted upon you, eventually you started self-inflicting this cycle. Yet, like people-pleasing, you probably didn't know you were doing it. The biggest red flag is seeking validation from others about what you think, feel, say, and do, hence social media. Do you ever ask people if your opinion of a person is accurate? How about questioning whether or not your actions in a situation are justified? Do you check if you're right to feel the way you do about an issue or about a person? How often do you ask others if you look okay? We do this sort of thing all the time, and this potent cycle is the reason why. It seems totally innocent, but asking for validation indicates that the mental and emotional parts of this cycle have spun out of control. What's going on inside you begs to be expressed, and asking for support is the dead giveaway that it has been. Now, asking for advice is one thing, but approval is another. Being conditioned by this cycle since childhood really makes me wonder if we are even capable of distinguishing between the two. You see, the mental cycle is thinking that you need to know what others think and feel. The emotional cycle is ever-present uncertainty about your own thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. Then the physical cycle keeps you actively seeking validation from others. This is why people thrive off likes and comments on social media. Though this cycle can reach far beyond the social sphere and into the world sphere thanks to the internet, it's actually more dangerous to keep it in the self sphere. As the methods of self-infliction available to you only increase as you get older, this means the risks are heightened. Usually, this remains unnoticed until it's too late and you've completely lost control, which allows the cycle to take over your life. That certainly was the case for me, and you may not have noticed it before, but it might also be the case for you too. You may be perpetuating the cycle of validation without realizing, as it tends to operate without your conscious awareness. So, say you had a tough week, so you stop off to get some wine on the way home from work. Why not? You deserve it, right? Maybe you go to the pub for Friday night drinks with some workmates instead, and while you're there, you might gamble a bit. You earned it, didn't you? So what's the harm in blowing off some steam and a couple $100? Perhaps your style is to buy junk food, get takeaway for dinner, binge a brain-numbing series, shop online, or get laid. Your expression of this cycle may look different, but it doesn't matter what you physically do, because mentally and emotionally, we're all spiraling around the same thing. The truth is, there is no difference whether you are buying stuff, consuming crap, or injecting methamphetamines. The fact remains that you are doing something to validate a negative experience, and feeding energy to this cycle only strengthens it. So every time you feel that urge and satisfy it, you complete the cycle and propel it back into motion. This cycle operates so secretly inside of you that by the time you spring into action, you're totally misguided about the problem. It's not your day, your life, your relationship, your job, or stress that made you do it. It's the mental and emotional cycles of validation fueling your need to express them. That's why you feel like you physically have to do something. Tell someone, have a drink, a smoke, gamble, buy something. It comes out in all kinds of addictive behaviours that get out of hand. It might even be a form of physical expression that you don't think is connected, like aggression or anxiety. So unbeknownst to you, every time you complete the cycle, you're not only validating your negative experience, but your victimhood as well. Given the opportunity, almost everyone will reveal something significant from their childhood that's had a devastating and lifelong impact on them. It's the time that shapes us all the most and presents us with many of the experiences that we spiral around for the rest of our lives. So to completely understand yourself, or anyone else for that matter, it's clear you must detangle the bugs in your web of life starting from this powerful period. It's undeniable that these wounds take the longest to heal and their scars will always remain. Whether it was a big trauma or a bunch of little ones, having our pain validated by others makes up for the invalidation we received as children and helps us along our path to healing. Though the impacts of trauma vary over time and from person to person, one thing is certain. It creates a series of cycles that, if left unchecked, will continue for the rest of your life. At the end of each chapter, I have a chapter summary that I call Stuff That Should Stick. The you self that you think you are now was created in your mind from a young age, built upon other people's opinions and comments about you. This forms the basis of your self-beliefs and perception about who you are, which spawns your first ever self-sphere belief cycles and the hardcore ones that likely still linger, despite years of opposition and extensive evidence, mind you. The cycle of validation is a generational one that operates in every childhood environment. It programs you to seek others' approval and applies the pressure to conform to outside expectations, especially those of authority figures like parents, but also includes social expectations. The cycle of victimhood and the cycle of validation are always connected. Your desire for acceptance makes you victim to comments, opinions, critique, feedback, and the criticisms of others. The cycle of validation is repeatedly revolving for the majority of us, and we constantly continue to perpetuate it. The catch is that it's hard to recognize how often you're perpetuating it, even when you know it exists as a cycle in your web. I want to see how real you can be with yourself. Have a think about every time you post something on social media. Do you understand the purpose for why you're doing it? Why is it that you want to share it? And what are you looking for from people when you share it? Why do you feel the need to share it in the first place? On some level, whether you're aware of it or not, you are seeking validation. This is me with my family. What are you trying to say about yourself when you post a photo with family, or when you're out socializing and you post a picture? When you write, long captions or tell stories, share information, there is a level of validation that you're seeking from everybody on your social media. And that could be a direct thing when you share your opinion. You want to validate your opinion. So you're looking for likes and the reactions and the comments from people backing you. Like it gives you more credibility and authority. Like you're checking to see if you're right, checking to see how many people agree with you. And that matters to you on a certain level as well. Even if you're just posting a picture of yourself because you got a new haircut or something. Growing up, these weren't things that were available to us. We just lived our lives afterwards and people would comment or notice it when we saw them. But what are you looking for? Because first and foremost, it will be validation. How often do you recognize that you're doing that? Because the act of posting, and social media is just a great example, but there is many other examples. It's just the most common that people would be able to understand and relate to. And you might recognize this first in other people before recognizing it in yourself. You might notice somebody's always posting photos of themselves in a certain way or looking for something, and it seems so overtly obvious to you, but you don't realize that when you've posted something, it is what you're doing as well. It can just be easier to see that part of ourselves reflected in others, and it's a lot easier to identify it in others more so than ourselves. It can be very confrontational to realize that about yourself. What you need to understand, though, is before you're posting, all the emotional and the mental parts of your validation cycle are running the show. That's what forces the action to be expressed. It's what makes you do the thing of posting. But even when you're, say, editing, and maybe it's the picture or a reel or writing the caption to a post that you put on social media, you may not be realizing it in the moment, but a lot of the way that you are editing whatever the content is, you're considering how it would be perceived by other people. And you might alter things that you're saying to gain more approval, more validation, more likes, more comments. By the time you've actually posted it, the mental and emotional cycles have forced it into expression. But then if you're looking back at your social media to check who's liked, who's commented, what they've said, and the good feels that it gives you, and it goes the other way because you might notice somebody hasn't liked or somebody hasn't commented. That usually does. And it's almost like you do like a self-check-in, like, oh, why didn't they do that? All of that is a big part of the cycle of validation. But after you've posted, yes, checking is also another part of that cycle. But because it's triggering more emotional and mental parts of that cycle to resurface, you're actively perpetuating that cycle to continue. You're forcing it back into motion. That's why I like people like, I think Gary Vee says it, when you post, just move on, just like let it go and move on. Because in doing that, you're not doing it for validation. You're just doing it and you're not being more susceptible to how people are responding to it. Because then it's like a social expectation then that's who you are, that's how you come across, and you keep doing things like that for more validation. Just put things out there without being attached to the outcome. But I want you to consider when you post where the validation sits for you. Is it in the heart space? Is it in the stomach? Like, oh, how are people going to react to this? Is it all in your head, just thinking, what will people say? What will people think? How many people will react to this? Because I'm telling you, every single post is the cycle of validation. And that's just with social media. Don't get me started on the rest of your life. So, thanks for being here with me for this ep. New ones will come out to you every other Thursday. If you'd like to get a copy of the book, the link will be in the show notes, as will be the free PDF you can get of the complete Web of Life philosophy. You take it easy, beautiful people. You'll hear from me soon.